Welcome back, you guys. Today we are going to talk about all the trowels I own and discuss what makes a good trowel. Yes, how many do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have owned a few more trowels. I can't necessarily remember them, but these are in like order of when I bought them. This is actually the second trowel I've ever owned. The first one was a carbon steel drywall trowel, 14 inch by 4.5 inch from Home Depot. It was one of those hooked trowels. I could never figure the thing out. I hated it. I used it for a bit, but then I got this one, and I believe this was actually bought by my wife as a birthday or Christmas present. Do you remember which one it was? Okay, you bought this for me. And this is a carbon steel Richard. You know, it's kind of funny because like, you don't think about Richard when it comes to trowels. They make a lot more like putty knives. Like they make my favorite putty knives. I only use these. Anyways, we're not talking about putty knives. We're talking about trowels, but when I think of Richard, I think of putty knives. This one is 4.5 by 11.5. Carbon steel, which I don't usually use because as you can see, it rusts, but the proportions on this trowel are amazing. If I could get this trowel, preferably in 5 inches wide, because when a trowel is 5 inches wide as opposed to 4, and you're going into a corner or something, like when you're getting into corners, it's easy to knuckle. So having that extra 1/4 inch on the trowel just makes it way easier in corners, and it spills off the edges less. Just something about the way this handle feels where it is. I love this trowel. Part of it is the handle is kind of lower than most handles. If we actually measured or compared them side by side, you'd see that most handles are about this much higher. A little under 3 1/4, a little over 3 1/4, 3 1/4. Marshalltown, 3 1/2, bam, 3 1/2, bam. So this just has a beautiful height handle, and something about being lower gives me more control. Also the carbon steel, in spite of the fact that it rusts, it actually feels really good. So this is basically the one that I cut my teeth on. This is the one I learned on. It was a really nice trowel, but eventually I did want a bigger one. And the next one I got was a Curry trowel, 14 by 4.5. So Curry is not, I don't believe they're in business. I've seen some on the internet. I don't know if they're authentic or not, but Curry was known to be kind of the cream of the crop. Creme de la creme of trowels by plasterers. Anybody that was in the trowel trades probably knew about Curry trowels. They were based out of, Costa Mesa, California. And you can still find their website. I've tried calling them, all sorts of things. I've never gotten a hold of anybody. I'm pretty sure that they are actually out of business, which is a shame because they are by far my favorite trowels. And we'll get into that in a bit. I used this one for a while though. And I'd say my biggest complaint about it was kind of long, kind of narrow. Eventually I learned that I actually like a shorter trowel. 14, when you're pushing a 14-inch trowel all day, eventually you realize that you're just pushing more material than you need to, and it's more work on the shoulder than you have to do. But the 4.5 width has some advantages. So it will feather a little bit easier because you don't lose so much power in the flex of the blade. Once you have a 1/2 inch wider blade, it flexes more and you're losing a little bit of that feathering ability. But again, you gain it back, you gain your speed back in not knuckling in the corners and not having it spill over as much. So you can just you can apply more easier. The next one, this is a, what is that? It looks like a 10 inch. I don't even know. Yeah, 10 inch by 4.5. I was working for this other drywaller for about a week or so, and he was like, oh yeah, this is a great trowel, perfect for corner bead, first coat on corner beads because it's, you know, nice and small and stiff. And when you use it, it just leaves it really flat. But I hated this thing. I've never found a use for it. I don't even know why I still own it. The reason I hate it is, let's look at just how short that is, right? How much space is there right there? So this is actually a really important space on a trowel. For the skateboarders, this is like the wheelbase of trowels. Skateboarders know about wheelbase, at least the informed ones do. But we're looking at a 1/2 inch right there. It's tiny. right? A 1/2 inch is no space. So this, you'll be able to feather really well, but when you're trying to float at all, like if your mud is wider than the trowel, you are never gonna be able to get these edges to not dig in because they're too stiff. It has no flex and it doesn't ride over an uneven surface. So the only thing that this would be good for is like really small, really flat fills. So this thing has sat forever. I know it looks like I've used it, but I don't know when. Like I honestly can't remember when I've used it. All right, this trowel right here is a hooked trowel. Again, it's got a big curve in it. I really have never found much use for these. I made that video where I said the only thing that this is good for is a doorstop. It doesn't mean that hooked trowels are bad. It's that I think they have limited uses. You can use them for flat joints because they leave a crown. Their intended purpose is to leave a crowned joint that shrinks back to flat. I've just found that I don't have the right amount of control when you start getting into intersecting joints or when you start having to coat anything wider than about 10 inches. Basically anything wider than about 1 inch on each end of the trowel. So if you have a 14-inch hook trowel, you're gonna be able to max out at about 12-inch joints. So it's just a one-trick pony that's really limiting. But people use these on flat joints and corner beads. Some people have techniques for doing butt joints with them. I don't understand that. Geez, are we already at my favorite trowel? My baby? This is the, if I lose this trowel, I'll quit drywall trowel. This is at least 8 years old now. This is a Curry, 5-inch by 12-inch. Beautiful proportions. Some would say maybe a little bit on the short end, right? But I have been using this as my daily spreader for, again, almost 8 years. Whenever I'm doing drywall work, this is the one I always go to. 5 inches, so again, no knuckling, and it doesn't spill over the edges. At 12 inches, it's also kind of short. So the benefit there is that, again, you are not having to push too much material so you don't get as much fatigue in the shoulder. And trust me, I know about fatigue in the shoulder. I've got shoulder issues from drywall work that have never really gone away. Yeah, this is a beautiful trowel. It's so worn in. If you are able to get an up close look at it, you can see how the edges are all rounded over. Is it picking up at all? It's sharp, basically. You could almost slice a tomato with this thing because this is so rounded over that this edge becomes sharp. Okay. When a trowel gets this old, one of the things that it doesn't do very well is feather an edge. You have to work a little bit harder. A nicely filed square edge feathers an edge really well, but what this does amazingly well is skim coat. Because that edge is so rounded over, it never drags and pulls the mud. It just kind of compresses it and leaves it so flat and smooth on your skim coats. This one is like an extension of my body, right? When I use this one, I don't have to think. I can coat the fastest with this one, even though it's a little bit shorter than a lot of people would use. Okay, so this one was my favorite, and this one, not surprisingly, is my second favorite trowel. This is just a 14-inch by 5-inch Curry trowel. I ignored this one for a long time. One, because it's a little bit wider, so it's a bit more fatigue, but also because it had a bad handle on it. So it was just too fat. I don't have big hands, you guys. Like if you look at these are piano hands. My dad has gorilla hands. I have piano hands, and I need a smaller handle on my trowel. So I took this, I actually shaved it down with this guy and made it just the right size, and now I actually love this trowel. It has almost all the same properties as this, but it can do a bit of a bigger spread a little easier. So lately what I've been doing is I'll often do my first coat on corner beads with this one, and I'll do my second coat with this one. First coat on flats with this, second coat with this. It's just an easy way to spread the mud a little bit wider without having to do 2 passes to cover a corner bead or a flat. And then next one we've got here is a 16 by 5-inch Curry trowel. This is, again, a beautiful trowel. Oh, I didn't mention, but every trowel after that first one is stainless steel, except for this. I only run stainless steel trowels because they're just less maintenance. I don't want to be cleaning them and trying to stop them from rust. I don't want to be sanding rust off. And I don't like how when you use a carbon trowel, you come in and your first few spreads of the day kind of look like there's like poop on the wall because the rust leaves like gross streaks and stains. Yeah, I know my wife is like frowning at that comment, but that's what it looks like. You don't want brown streaks in your mud. Use a stainless steel trowel. Anyways, this one's beautiful. Like if you have wider joints or things that need to be floated out really wide, a 16-inch trowel is nice. It does a good job, but once again, 16 inches, you're going to get a sore shoulder after a while. I know some people are heroes and this is their daily driver. I couldn't do it. It's a beautiful trowel and it'll make a really nice butt joint or a skim job, but yeah, it'll make you tired too. This one I bought for doing plaster, not plaster, stucco. I was watching a lot of Kirk Giordano videos and I had a stucco job to do. And he loves the pool trowels, the big pool trowels for applying stucco. So I tried this and I did some stucco jobs with it. And yes, it doesn't leave lines as much because of this, but you also can't get into corners. And I found that to be a real drag. And the other thing is because this space is massive, 3 inches, look at that flex, right? I just found that when you have, 3 inches on each side, it really felt like the trowel was actually only this big effectively. Because when you need to put a lot of pressure on it and this part can flex up so much, the working area of the trowel is kind of only this big, unless the material is really soft. But when you're working stucco or something, no, these needed to be longer for this to be effective. So this is just a rust and dust collector. Okay, so what do we have here? I don't even know how long this one is. It looks like 20. That would be my guess. That's 16 inches. That's about roughly 4. Yeah, it's basically, no, it's actually like 19 inches. Anyways, let's just say it's 19 or 20 inches. Doesn't really matter. By 5. This is a Craft Tool Co. Same as this one. So all of these, except for this, has been Curry. I think this was actually Richard, but this is a Craft Tool Co. like that. This is actually a beautiful trowel. Another thing that I haven't mentioned about trowels is the ends should be slightly upturned, just a little bit. And that's to stop the edges from digging in when you're doing a big spread, right? Because those will dig in. So this one has pretty big space there, about 2 inches, but I never noticed it to be a problem because the spine is huge. So this thing will really leave a flat joint. And when I used this one the most was when I first bought it. I didn't come up with it, but I just used a method for skim coating ceilings, which was I got I think it was a 16-inch roller, a big massive bucket, and I would mix up a trough, and I would mix up drywall mud pretty thin, pour it into this trough. It's for priming large areas. It's just a painter's roller, a big wide one. You guys have probably seen them. And I would spread that on the ceiling while I'm on stilts. Like I'd have the whole thing on a cart and I'd spread out like a 4x8 area at least, maybe bigger. Actually, it was probably much bigger to try and justify it. And then I would come and spread this. And this was before skimming blades were around. So everyone would say, why didn't you use a skimming blade? Because they weren't popular back then. Like I probably bought this like 10 years ago. Anyways, that's a dust collector as well because it's just too massive. But once in a while, if I have to go, say, between, on a column, anything that's narrower than this trowel, but like corner beads that need to be filled, I'll use this. It's great for that. And it's better than a skimming blade because it's stiffer. So it leaves the mud flatter, whereas a skimming blade will conform to uneven surfaces, which is good for some things, but for leaving something flat, it's bad. Okay, so next, out of these, the next thing I bought was this Nila. Nila is a well-known, made in Germany trowel company. I bought this one because it had the lowest feeling handle out of all the ones I could see, and I thought, why don't I get a Nila? I've never really tried one. Let's see if it'll be different. Actually, I did buy one. I bought a 12-inch one ages ago. Tried it. It always made a bad scraping sound on the hawk. Like when I was holding the hawk, wiping the mud off, I had to change the angle so that it didn't go like, just a really nasty, like almost nails on chalkboard type of sound. And I didn't like that, so I never got used to it and eventually gave it away. But I thought, let's give Nila another try. And I was able to adjust the wiping, but what I couldn't get used to on this trowel was trying to not leave lines in wide spreads. The reason is this space. We're getting back to that trowel wheelbase. I don't even know if there's a name for this distance, but it's worth checking it out because this one is measuring in at about 1 1/8 inches. And if we measure my favorite trowels, they all have the same thing. So right here, about 1 7/16 inches. 1 3/8 inches, so 1/16 difference. 1 7/16 inches. 1 7/16 inches. This one's about closer to 1 3/8 inches. It's the perfect amount of space to give the exact right amount of flex. So there is one more trowel that I haven't talked about. I made a video about this one. This was the first Marshalltown I ever bought. And I remember using it and thinking like, it feels great, but something's off and I couldn't figure out why. When I measured this one, we are coming in at almost 1 3/4 inches. I just remember that it was harder to feather the edge because it got to the point that there was so much flex and it was hard, like I couldn't feel like I was getting a 13-inch trowel. This one's 13 inches. I couldn't feel like I was actually getting the advantages of using a 13-inch trowel, which would be smoothing out more mud because again, this is so short in comparison that I felt like the almost a 1/2 inch of this trowel on each edge was sort of dead space. It just flexed too much. Still a good trowel, don't get me wrong. Like I would choose this over one that is too short any day. I would rather have this space be a little bit too long than a little bit too short because this is beautiful for skimming, just a little more work for feathering. Great for feathering, but like digging in my edges on every pass. And I really cemented all that in when I bought this 12-inch Marshalltown trowel because I didn't even look at this. I really wasn't honed in quite to what that distance should be yet until I compared these two. And I was like, wow, this one's so different, right? Like you can visually see how different that is. So there's not very much that I like this Marshalltown trowel for. Like not much at all. Maybe a first coat on corner beads, but even still, as soon as I have to round a corner on a corner bead, or as soon as I have to tie in a flat joint or a butt joint into the corner bead, I just find that I can't stop digging in edges. So there's a Goldilocks zone of this space right here, and Curry had it exactly right. Okay, and the last one is my most expensive purchase. Again, the space on this is pretty long, right? 1 5/8 inches. It's not as long as this one, but let's see if it's the same on both sides. 1 5/8 inches, 1 5/8 inches. Yeah, this one was like, I didn't even look at the receipt till after I bought it and was driving away, but it was like $120 Canadian, which is like insane for a trowel. But it's a beautiful trowel. The gold on it is what made me do it. I'm a sucker. I like nice looking tools. Again, all stainless steel, and I've only done one little job with this. Feels pretty good. I think that if my preferred Curry trowels ever die, I'll probably go to Marshalltown because I'd say it's my second favorite feeling trowel. Marshalltown also has a Curry style trowel. Like that's how good Curry trowels are, that Marshalltown markets a whole new line of trowels called Curry style trowels. You've maybe seen those, but I don't like them because I don't like the feel of the handles. They're all too fat. And yes, I could just shave them down myself, but I don't believe that they got the Curry style trowel just right. I don't believe it. Anyways, you guys, that is all my trowels. What I like them for, what I don't like them for, and what I learned about them. So pay attention to your trowel's wheelbase. Find out what you like about a trowel and why. And let me know in the comments, what are your favorite trowels? What size? What do you like them for? What trowels have you tried that are garbage? Yeah, fill us in the comments. Anyways, I hope you guys are doing awesome. And yeah, that's everything I've learned about trowels from each one of these. And there is a little dog in here. How's it going, buddy? What are you up to? Yeah, you're not getting away that easy. This is, thanks. Yeah, clearly we're done because this video's gone to the dogs. Okay, thanks for watching, you guys. Hope you're doing awesome. Till the next one.